So I want to make a quick video today. And when I say I want to make a quick video, I usually make a long one. So I'm going to see what happens. So the first thing I want to tell you before I forget is that, we've been going over some pretty complicated or nuanced topics when it comes to our relationship with money. And at the same time, I want you to remember that there's these fundamental points that we can rely on that aren't that complicated. They aren't as complicated or as hard as the stuff that Joel Goldsmith talks about and, that we referenced yesterday. They're more simple to understand and implement. And, I've done many videos on these simple topics. I'm going to link above to a video I did earlier this year, just talking about 2 easy things you can do to start feeling better about money. And I'm also going to link above to another video I did in that same seminar I taught, which is more of a quote-unquote advanced way to look at money and, just supply in your life. Both of those videos are worth watching if you haven't seen them before. Also, my short guide, 5-Minute Finances, which is an Emile Coué inspired guide about just improving your relationship with wealth. That is free today on Kindle. I will put the link below in the description for 5-Minute Finances. If you've never read that, I think that you'll appreciate what I'm saying in that little guide, especially after having watched these videos. It's not about a specific formula per se. It's much more about the underlying message and feeling more relaxed about money in your day-to-day life than, saying a certain affirmation. But I think that little guide can be helpful. Also, Mindful Manifestation, a guide I wrote back in 2015, just about, using Neville's advice to feel more relaxed and to if you're going to have a meditation practice, to really focus on relaxation as part of that meditation practice. That guide is also free today on Kindle. So both those guides free today on Kindle. You can look in the description to find the links to them. And without further ado, let me read a little bit more of Joseph Murphy from The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, just talking about, bringing out this wealth from within. Murphy says, don't sign blank checks. He writes, you sign blank checks when you make such statements as, there is not enough to go around. There is a shortage. I will lose the house because of the mortgage, etc. If you are full of fear about the future, you are also writing a blank check and attracting negative conditions to you. Your subconscious mind takes your fear and negative statement as your request and proceeds in its own way to bring obstacles, delays, lack, and limitation into your life. We have a tendency to do this, not just with money, but with everything, with our health, with our relationships. Again, I always talk about how we have a tendency to overthink and think of worst case scenarios and to buy into them a lot more than we tend to buy into the positive qualities we want to bring out, like love, peace, health, friendship, wealth, things like that. That's really what we want to dwell on. And doing these different, techniques and stuff are just ways to bring out those qualities that we want. Affirmations, like I talk about in 5-Minute Finances and like what Murphy's talking about in this chapter, are very easy ways to start bringing out more of what we want as opposed to what we don't want, and to have us stop signing blank checks about what we don't want. And instead to kind of consciously, bring forth what we do want and then relax into it and let it naturally come into our lives by changing our train of thought and by changing our cycles of thought so they're more positive and more conducive to bringing out the qualities we want in our life as opposed to the qualities we do not want. So the next section is called Your Subconscious Gives You Compound Interest. Murphy goes on to say, to him that hath the feeling of wealth, more wealth shall be added. To him that hath the feeling of lack, more lack shall be added. Your subconscious multiplies and magnifies whatever you deposit in it. And remember, as Coué always says, subconscious and imagination are synonymous most of the time. So another way to look at that line is your imagination multiplies and magnifies whatever you deposit in it, or whatever you think, whatever you imagine is then multiplied. Murphy goes on to say, every morning as you awaken, deposit thoughts of prosperity, success, wealth, and peace. Again, in my guide, 5-Minute Finances, I talk to you about how to very easily do that. Murphy says, dwell upon these concepts. Busy your mind with them as often as possible. Great line there. Busy your mind with them as often as possible. Dwell upon these positive concepts that are conducive to the qualities you want to bring out. Health, wealth, peace. Dwell on them as opposed to the negatives. Murphy says these constructive thoughts will find their way as deposits in your subconscious mind and bring forth abundance and prosperity. I.e., these constructive thoughts will find their way as deposits in your imagination and bring forth abundance and prosperity. And then Murphy's next section is called Why Nothing Happened. And he says, I can hear you saying, oh, I did that and nothing happened. I think we can all relate to that when we have failures applying these quote unquote simple techniques. This is such a simple technique. This teacher said this is going to work. Why isn't this working? And Murphy's saying, you did not get results because you indulged in fear thoughts, perhaps 10 minutes later, and neutralized the good you had affirmed. I'm going to read that again because it's really sums up a lot of the problems we have applying these principles in our lives and why they don't work better a lot of the time. You did not get results because you indulged in fear thoughts perhaps 10 minutes later and neutralized the good you had affirmed. So you did all these nice positive affirmations, but then 10 minutes later, half an hour later, you start buying in, not just having fear thoughts, not just imagining fearfully for, a couple moments, but buying into them. And then the rest of the day, your cycle of thought is really much more aligned with those fear thoughts than it is with those positive thoughts you affirmed earlier. See, a couple minutes of affirmations or even 20 minutes of affirmations a day can't beat you the rest of the day indulging in fear thoughts, imagining fearfully. What this is all about is figuring out a way so that you are imagining either neutrally about you want or positively about you want. It's okay to have some thoughts that are fearful. That's going to happen. That's quite natural to have fearful thoughts. But to be able to dismiss them, to dismiss their validity and be like, you know what, these are just fearful thoughts, no big deal. I'm still going to get what I want. Things are still getting better and better. I'm becoming wealthier and wealthier on the inside. It's going to show up on the outside. Inevitably, these fear thoughts are just passing things. You want to switch your train of thought, your cycle of thought, so your imagination is veering towards the positive as opposed to veering and often careening towards the negative. It's about that. It's not about the 2 minutes of affirmations or the 5 minutes of affirmations or the half an hour of affirmations or the 2 minutes of visualization or the 5 minutes of visualization or the 10, 20, 30, 40, 80 minutes of visualization you do a day. It's about how that makes you respond to your imagination, to your thinking the rest of the day. You do not get results because you indulged in fear thoughts perhaps 10 minutes later and neutralized the good you had affirmed. Really sums up a lot. Murphy goes on to say, when you place a seed in the ground, you do not dig it up. You let it take root and grow. Suppose, for example, you are going to say, I shall not be able to make that payment. Before you get further than I shall, stop the sentence and dwell on a constructive statement such as, by day and by night, I am prospered in all my ways. Just an example of, counteracting that fear thought or, when this train of of fearful thoughts starts going, immediately counteract it. You don't have to do it by just like logically using an affirmation. You can also be like, fuck you, I'm not buying into that bullshit. Things are getting better. You can forcefully deny it. You can do whatever. Do whatever you need to do, as I always say, to counteract that negativity, neutralize it, and just move on and get positive, I hope this helped. Any questions, radicalcounselor.com.